The moment was surreal on national television. President Cyril Ramaphosa, previously celebrated as a reformer and the ANC's great hope, once regarded as messianic figure, formally resigned from office. There was no stage-managed press statement, no planned address, and no pomp and circumstance build-up. Rather, there was merely a visibly distressed man standing before the cameras with a pressure-wrinkled face, failure-radiating eyes and scandal-scarred forehead. What started as a routine parliamentary sitting soon became a political earthquake that jolted the pillars of South African democracy. His words echoed through the chamber like a clap of thunder. Gas followed gas from the benches. Reporters scribbled furiously and cameras focused on a president who in that instant seemed bereft of all that once characterized his public persona. 4 years he had vowed renewal, accountability and harmony within a divided ANC. But now for millions viewing in their homes, Cyril Ramaphosa conceded what his critics had long cautioned, that the tempest within the governing party finally got to him. The resignation was historic, unprecedented, and dramatically devastating. No sitting South African president had ever resigned so abruptly, so uncutly, and with such massive consequences. His decision sent shockwaves not only through the ANC, but also left common citizens bewildered, not knowing what the next book would hold for their nation. Behind the scenes, insiders had long whispered that the ANC's internal wars were nearing a breaking point. Factional battles between Ramaphosa's allies and his rivals had been festering beneath the surface for years, fueled by power struggles, corruption scandals, and policy failures. But few imagined that the conflict would spill out into public in such an explosive way. Yet, in hindsight, the clues had been there all along. The president's steadily more defensive language in speeches, the palpable exasperation of his ministers, and opposition voices growing bolder had all indicated that at some point there had to be a reckoning. What actually drove him to the point of no return, however, was one shattering revelation. In the hours leading up to his TV announcement, several media outlets received leaks of a confidential document detailing alleged corruption, political manipulation, and financial mismanagement by the senior ANC leaders at the top. While the contents of the dossier were not made public, its fact that it existed was sufficient to create party instability. Ramaphosa found it the last straw. In accordance with sources near his office, the president was presented with a bleak alternative. Hold on and fight a vicious civil war within his own allies. A war for which no triumph was assured, or resign before the party destroyed itself utterly. Ultimately he decided to withdraw, but his action has placed the ANC and the country in unknown territory. The most ominous fact is that there is no apparent replacement. In contrast to past transitions during which leadership had been negotiated and prepared, this resignation has created a perilous vacuum. The ANC, for decades the hegemonic power in South African politics since the end of apartheid, finds itself overnight leaderless, fractured and vulnerable. Its internal machinery, once disciplined, strong and feared, now seems to be fractured, disoriented, and completely unready for the tempest that awaits. Within Parliament, the aftermath was instantaneous and pandemonium. Top ANC leaders were left visibly stunned. Some were observed fleeing the chamber in tears, while others stormed out in rage, shouting accusations at their colleagues. Many were left standing in transfixed silence, still trying to comprehend what had just happened. And then the most glaring and disturbing news of all, the very noticeable absence of Deputy President Paul Motsepe. Constitutionally, Motsepe should have taken over as acting president immediately. Hours later, however, his office had said nothing. He had no public appearance, issued no announcement, and provided no explanation to a hungry nation for answers. His mysterious vanishing act has only heightened the feeling of crisis, fueling wild speculation. Certain insiders assert Motsepe had been gunning for a showdown with Ramaphosa's leadership in a high-risk game of power and perhaps was caught off guard by the surprise resignation. Others assume he is taking a step back from the meltdown. Not wanting to be saddled with a sinking ship. Regardless of what is true, his silence has deprived South Africa of a visible head of government, producing the sort of perilous instability that beckons both domestic upheaval and international alarm. Parliament itself spiraled into virtual anarchy. Opposition in peace took advantage of the situation with passionate outbursts, lambasting the ANC for a decade of broken promises, corruption and misrule. The Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, called for snap elections as a matter of urgency as the ANC had lost any moral right to rule. The Democratic Alliance, DA, followed suit, calling for the people and not the divided ANC to determine who should lead South Africa next. Within the chamber, fists pounded on desks, voices screamed over each other, and the speaker fought to regain order. The chaos picked up by live cameras gave South Africans a glimpse of the raw vulnerability of their democracy. For most of those watching at home, it was a frightening moment. For others, it was the overdue fall of a political giant that had lost its moral mandate. And all across South Africa's borders, the globe was witnessing. Within moments of the news, international media scrolled out headlines in urgent red and yellow. World leaders made measured comments, some warning against potential unrest, others positioning the resignation as a chance for South Africa to start anew and rebuild. Commentators around the world held it as one of the most significant political pivots in post-apartheid times. The stakes are higher than ever. South Africa, which was already in economic doldrums, high unemployment and gross inequality, is now directionless at the top. Investors are nervous, citizens are apprehensive, and the reputation of Africa's most wanted democracy is in sharp focus. But in the midst of doubt, there is hope. South Africans have suffered decades of corruption crisis, unfulfilled promises, and self-interested leadership. But Ramaphosa's resignation, shocking though it was, perhaps created space for something different. It is a wrenching reminder that no one is above the law, no party above recall, and that power always lies with the people. This moment appeals to regular South Africans to stay awake, active and voiceful. It is an appeal to call for better leadership, more accountability, and actual change. It is an opportunity to demand that the future not be determined by backroom deals and factional fights, but by the people themselves.